When I first started coming here, there was just something enchanting about this place that I just couldn't put my finger on. Before I even knew what was going on here, it was just something mysterious and actually peaceful that kept drawing me back. My legal name is Paul Michael Bergeron, but I go by Mike. I'm the author of Sarobia, Sanctuary for Humans, Birds, and Animals. To me, when I first learned about it, I found it quite exotic. I had found a 1937 article from Time magazine that brought up mysticism and cult-like activities on this estate. Have sometimes whispered that cat worshippers and heathen lives here. So I read that and I said, this is my kind of place. That's what piqued my interest about this place. And I was over at the spot where my son and I used to toss rocks, and somebody called it Logan's Point. I said, but piquing my interest a little bit more, so I ran into this area. I ran into the wall and Humpty Dumpty, and I said, I got to really research and find out what this place was. And this place is such a wonderful site, and it has such a rich history. I wanted to tell the right story, the true story of what happened here. Well, Neshaminy State Park was the former estate of Robert Logan. He's the last descendant of James Logan, who was William Penn's 17th century colonial secretary. Sarobia, all it is a portmanteau, which is a combination of two words together to form one. Sarah, Logan's wife, and his name, Rob. Sarobia. Logan and his wife Sarah acquired 14 acres of this land, which was called Fox County Estate. They ended up buying this place around 1915, which it finally accumulated 150 acres. He was a lawyer, graduated the Harvard School of Law. Logan was a naturalist, and they wore no animal skins, no leather. Both he and his wife believed in reincarnation, especially of animals. And they were against killing of animals. They wouldn't even swat a mosquito or swap down a spider web. Both he and Sarah were vegetarians. They grew their own food on the property. Robert was a sculptor. Sarah loved amateur theater, painting. She was an accomplished bookbinder. She belonged to the Colonial Dames and Art Alliance in Philadelphia. Deborah was their daughter, their only child. She was born in 1900. She moved to Sarobia here when she was 15. She lived a high societal life. Deborah tried to commit suicide by jumping off the roof of their house. Andy, the caretaker, caught her, saved her life, and she finally got committed to Friends Hospital's insane asylum. Around the late 1910s, the Logans became interested in theosophy. Annie Besant, who was a British theosophist and president of the International Theosophical Society, visited Logan here often. She was Jiddu Krishnamurti's legal guardian. He was the so-called forthcoming theosophist messiah. He gave speeches around the world, many of which occurred here at Sarobia. Annie convinced Sarah to do an experiment in character building by discharging all her servants and running her estate from within. 13 additional houses and cabins were situated along Logan's Walk, that's what it's called now. They invited artists, artisans, stray dogs, and alley cats, all to live on and established an experimental artistic colony. And those people lived in those 13 various cabins and houses. And they would do whatever was needed to keep up the estate. The grounds, tended the crops that they grew over by where the pool now sits. That used to be all open fields where they grew wheat and corn and hay, vegetables, a massive field of sunflowers. Adjacent to the main entrance on Doug's Ferry Road was the gatehouse where Andy, the caretaker, lived. That place turned into the state park's office. Over at the end of Winks Lane was another gatehouse which they call Runcible Hall. Runcible was the name of one of Logan's cats, which he always had at least 10 of them on the property. He had these iron black cats on each gate post, which tend to fuel some of the insinuations that cat worshiping was happening in here. Once the park took it over, they ended up building a new office and they demolished both gatehouses. There was a lot of paraphernalia in here, like statues, chessboard. There was beautiful shrubbery that lined the perimeter of this place, high bushes, wrought iron fences, fountains, benches. They had benches in here. Some of the slides show this place looking like a paradise. He died heirless. Deborah had committed suicide, his wife died. He had no other heirs. So he willed everything to the Commonwealth, lock, stock, and barrel, with only one provision, that they turn this place into some sort of a park, place of recreation, a museum, a sanctuary for animals, especially birds. Logan gave the Commonwealth his Ford pickup, his tractor, all 150 acres of land, everything, lock, stock, and barrel. He suggested, but didn't require they keep the mansion. But basically everything that used to be here is gone, unfortunately. It took a long time between the state's acquisition of the property after Logan died in '56 until 1974 when the park officially opened. And all the stuff that anybody could pick up and walk away with happened. Over on the other side, I'll point it out to you, is an old horse-drawn cultivator that's laying there just rusting away and being taken over by nature. Trees are growing through it and everything. After the park took over the place, Andy became the first superintendent of the park. He was basically still the caretaker. He ran the operation in the greenhouse that grew the flowers for Independence Mall. Rumors of Logan having stashed money and gold in the walls of the mansion prevailed. Vandals went in there with sledgehammers, broke open the walls, destroyed the place to a totally unsafe and ravaged condition. The building was just too far shut. It was termite infested, come to find out. I was wondering why they demolished it. It was a beautiful house, which was one of the reasons that fascinates me about this place so much. I've seen pictures of that, and for some reason, I just know that place. It's like I used to live here in a prior life. I mean, that sounds silly, but I don't know. It's just something enchanting about this entire place, which acted as a magnet for me to find out what went on here. You know, who knows? Maybe I used to live here as one of the renegade artists in their experimental art colony. There's a lane over there that goes around the side. That would have gone along the side of the mansion. But the mansion basically sat all in that cleared, sort of cleared area. The back of the house sat here, went straight out. There was a long wing that contained bedrooms, and there was also an art studio in there. And the front part was an old Federalist type of house. It's got the high pillared porch. It looked straight down the path that was a magnificently manicured swath of land that was about 150 yards long. And at the end of this narrow swath was that sundial. That's a sundial that Robert Logan carved out of a block of granite. This is probably what I feel is Robert Logan's best piece of artwork. It used to be a sundial here. You can see the spots on there where the plate used to be fastened. There was a plate and an index that captured the sun to tell you what time of day it was. But located like here, that's an Egyptian symbol. There's an Egyptian symbol over here, which You'll recognize that one. It's pretty intricate. His initials, Robert R. Logan, are right here. Somebody had an idea to use that as a barbecue stand. So, which Jack, who was with the Historical Society at the time, thought, nah, I can't, that's a piece of art. So he had it moved in here. But the gate post over there, at the end of that walkway, it used to lead to where the mansion was. Now under here used to be the old chessboard, and you could pick up spots where the squares used to be. There's one over here, one there, one there, one over there. Used to be a walkway that ran all along that fence, straight down to the other end. There's still some more brick walkways in here that need to be uncovered. People have played human game of chess, I call it, where they would have tables set up on each of the squares, both sides, black and white, and invited people to come over to act as the chess pieces as two people executed a chess game, which, that's cool. These guys are, I would have loved to have been one of the artists living here because they must have had a good time. This is another one of Robert Logan's treasures, art pieces, I guess you could consider it. Another sundial. This is where the face used to sit. And you can see that they cemented a store-bought face up there and somebody chiseled it away. These are cool. Spade planters, which used to be filled with flowers at one time. This is the reflection pond. It used to be filled with water. That fountain back there used to have water come out of the mouth of that fish. There used to be a basin there, but somebody walked away with it. It was a marble basin. Yeah, looking at poor Humpty Dumpty. He's in the worst shape I've ever seen him. One of his legs are gone. As the old rhyme goes, got cracked and people put him together. He looks really cracked. But if you look at some of the old pictures, it was an egg without, maybe it looked like there were some cracks. But the poor guy's just falling apart. And I'm afraid that he's just going to crumble. This is the old pump house. You can see that there's a lot of stuff in there stored by the state. Wondering where all those doors and things came from. They had a pump in there, which used to bring up the water and spread it out to the estate. That's the only building that's left. Over in that open area is where the barn was. Doesn't look like a barn was there. The barn was a magnificent two-story building. On the second floor, they built a theater. Sarah would invite theater troupes in the summertime to stay in one of the cabins around the area, and they would perform plays. They had an art studio in the building that was attached to the barn. Also a weaver's studio in there. They were very artistic people. But the barn burned to the ground, allegedly from arson. And it was just too costly to even consider building, so they just got rid of it. All the cabins and houses set along Logan's Walk, which if you were to go around this walk here, they used to be all situated in the woods. You could almost visualize them. This was the carriage house. The whole carriage house was right in this area, on this side of the fence. The southeast corner attached to the end of the wall. And the greenhouses would be from the rear of the carriage house into the garden, right alongside of that little pool over there. The ground level, Sarah had her bookbinding business in there. There were also garages on the main level. Upstairs on the second level were two apartments, adjoining apartments. After the state park took over, they gave the bottom section to the Historical Society, where they based their organization. Termites put an end to the carriage house, and the greenhouses went with it in demolition. The most notable character that lived here was a fellow called Richard Blossom Farley. He was an early 20th century American Impressionist painter. He had contracted tuberculosis. Sarah invited him to live here, to breathe the clean country air, hoping to help him recuperate. He used to live in a tower house across the road here, which unfortunately they knocked down. And it was one of those, what they call the Father, Son, Holy Ghost house, which was one room built on top of the other. It was a 4-story affair. Right in here is where the tower house used to be. And you could almost see right in that area. I don't know, it had to be maybe 15 by 15 square. These are relatively young trees. You gotta figure they tore down that tower house probably in the 80s sometime. Farley built an underground house. He would stay there in the summer to escape the heat. Lived in the tower house in the winter. He strikes me as someone I really would have liked to have known, especially with his idea of building an underground house. When I first learned about that, that really piqued my interest, and I wanted to find it. So overgrown, I can't, here's an opening here. It looks like a groundhog hole, but that's an opening down into it. Here's the main opening here. His underground house encompassed this whole area. You had 15 rooms set up in a maze. He would start at one room at a time and dig a hole, lay a concrete floor. Robert provided the concrete for him. After the floor set, he would build the walls. Then he would fill it with debris all the way to the top, and then he put a tarp over there. And on top of the tarp, he used bottles to act as a skylight, cemented them in between stones, and once that's set, he had left a space open so he could pull out all that debris, took the tarp away, and there was one room. And it was like an underground mansion for him. What a place to live in the summer. I mean, that must have been so cool. This is probably the most fascinating aspect of Sarobia, is this for me. During the transition period from when Logan died and the state took over, kids got in there, they burned tires, holes in the roof appeared from erosion. It just became totally unsafe, and the state just bulldozed the whole place over. But basically, there's really nothing else here that would tell somebody this used to be a former estate. People are surprised when I tell them. And for somebody who doesn't know anything about the history of this place and hasn't seen this garden, they would figure this was just a rural part of Bucks County. I'd like them to see this garden and try and picture what it must have looked like back when Logan's lived here, back in his fluorescence. This is Logan's sanctuary right here. This is what he really wanted. He wanted the place to be his legacy. And they're doing a good job, and I hope they start restoring this place by uncovering the various treasures that have been buried over from time, these wonderful walkways. But I would like to see this place maintained and try and uncover this chessboard. That's my wish for Sarobia.